What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. This is Hawk Talk on Melrose. I am Colin, joined today with Tyler. Feels good to have him back on the show. On today's show, we're going to talk Caitlin Clark. We're going to get into the massive win that the Iowa men's team had last night against Michigan State. Does this team still have a fighting shot to make the tournament? We will discuss that. And then we'll end the show off talking the win total for Iowa football, which Vegas set at 7.5. Will we go over or under that? We'll kind of look at each game, kind of game by game, win or loss. Obviously, it's way too early between now and opening kickoff. A lot of things are going to change. A lot of things are going to be different. This is all for fun. It's a way too early kind of season preview for the schedule, and we're just going to have fun with it. So we'll end that on today's show. But before we begin, you can find Hawk Talk on Melrose on your favorite podcast app, including Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Castbox, and then also on YouTube. Make sure whatever platform you are listening to us on, you like us, you subscribe to us, and please leave a review, good or bad. You can also follow us on Twitter at Hawk Talk Melrose. That's at Hawk Talk. But yeah, let's get into first and foremost Caitlin Clark, because I got into a little bit of a discussion the other day about it, like by myself. Not having you, obviously, it would have been nice to kind of go more into detail with it. Pretty much what I said was just what she has done to the game, and essentially brought like us, who never in a million years would ever think that we would actually give a crap about women's basketball. No disrespect. It's just something that, like, growing up, like I just never really cared for. And just one person, how that can just shape and just make us view something completely different. Because yes, once Caitlin Clark leaves, I'm not going to be as tuned in, but honestly, like, watching women's basketball is not bad. And like, I actually have fun, and like they're actually pretty enjoyable, and they're competitive. And so she's just brought a different appreciation to the game. And that's kind of essentially what I said the other night, or on the last episode.
Yeah, and I've heard this from a couple of different people. Just listening and listening to all the commentary surrounding Caitlin Clark. It's like the women's game. If you really think about it, like, and I don't know if it's necessarily they're more skilled, but they're very skilled because they can't just rely on their athleticism, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Caitlin Clark can because she's different than everyone else, but that's why you see these girls. What if you watch these women's games, even the opponents against Iowa, and I know Iowa's defense isn't great, but like they don't miss threes. Like they miss more
No.
layups than they do threes, right? So like it takes actual skill to be able to consistently knock down your shots. As opposed to sometimes in the men's game where it just gets to be sort of, and even the NBA, so one-on-one based and athleticism based, where it's like there's not a lot of like actual offense being ran. So it's kind of a different appreciation, like you said, for actually like running set plays and you know getting these girls open shots. But yeah, man, I just real quick on Caitlin Clark. I mean, honestly, there's not a lot of words that I can even like describe her as, just other than GOAT, right? Like she's one of the greatest of all time in the women's game. I mean, she's proven that with not only the fact that she obviously broke the women's scoring record, but the fact that she's got like over a career 1,000 assists, and she doesn't just score the basketball; she passes it, makes her teammates better, and she hits shots that, like, obviously only a few people can do,
No.
and not many. And that's what, obviously, like you said, is so intriguing. She really is the Steph Curry of women's college basketball. Um, Her range and her logo threes and step backs and crossovers, you don't see it in the women's game very much. And so for her to do it and obviously wear the Iowa uniform, it's obviously, me and you, we have an affinity for anything Iowa, and watching her is awesome. So I wanted to ask you, because this came out kind of after your podcast, or maybe it came out during it, and I don't know if you saw it, but Jay Williams on
Oh, yeah.
College Game Day, where he's like, I'm not going to call her one of the greats of all time because she hasn't won a championship. And I don't know your thoughts on it. You hinted at it in the last pod where you're like, winning a championship is such a team thing.
Yep.
It's not an individual award. And like, I mean, she's literally drawn so many more eyeballs to the game and what she's done and is continuing to do. Like, she's literally one of the greatest players. She literally has the record for most points, and she's about to break the all-time record, men's or women's, and beat Pete
Yeah.
Maravich sooner
Isn't she
rather than
only like
later.
maybe like 100 points away from that or something like that, I think?
Yeah. And so to not say she's one of the greats because she hasn't won a championship is absolutely ridiculous. She didn't go to UConn just so she could win national titles. She went to Iowa because she wanted to put Iowa on the map, and she obviously did that.
Yeah. I think just going to the championship last year, regardless of winning it, was such a milestone for Iowa because it just doesn't happen.
No.
It'd be like in men's, right? It'd be like us getting some really, really good player that just compels us to the Final Four. Like they're going to go down for Iowa anyway as one of the best, if not the best, basketball player to come through Iowa because that said
Yeah.
person brought us somewhere where we just don't go very often. No, and that's the reason why I did say that actually on the last podcast was because of that reason, because I
Okay.
recorded on Sunday and I saw all those clips on Saturday. And that's the
Yeah.
reason why I said that about, when it comes down to will she decide to stay or go, I personally believe right now, and we can talk about this real briefly, is for me, I think I just think that she's probably going to go after this year because what more is there to do besides obviously win a national championship game? But then, like I said,
Yeah.
that's a team sport. You can't, you,
Yeah.
you just can't go there all the way and win it just one person. So that's, yes, a great reward, but that's more of a team reward, not an individual reward. And
Yeah.
so for her, and who knows this year, right? Like we still have March. Like anything can happen. Although I don't think this will be the year, but you never know. Might even if we go back to the Final Four, that's a huge accomplishment. So I thought that was just so stupid of Jay Williams to say that. I don't really quite understand why you would say that. I honestly think a lot of those ESPN people or just people in general, like a Skip Baylesses of the world, they're
Yeah.
all about clicks. They're all about getting
Right.
people to react. And I almost feel like that was one of those things where it's like, okay, everybody say she's great. And then, hey, you say this about her to make it just stir up on social media and people are reacting. People are clicking on the video, getting views. That's, I just feel like is what it all is. Like there's no
Yeah.
way she doesn't, or there's no way he doesn't think she is great. Do you think, however, as we kind of wrap this up, do you think she stays or do you think she'll go off to the WNBA is what I mean?
I kind of tend to lean towards what you've said and say, as of now, kind of I originally thought she might stay. NIL, way bigger, probably NIL deals in college right now for her than her first rookie NBA contract, or WNBA contract. But man, I just think, with she's been here now 4 years. You kind of said it perfectly on your last episode. I mean, what more is there left to do besides win a national championship, right? I mean, she's literally done everything she's promised she would do, or try to do when she came to Iowa, and she's obviously exceeding expectations by a mile. So, it's hard to say, but man, with the Indiana Fever being, having the number one overall pick, her going there and like you said, staying in the Midwest where her legend can continue to grow. Like I've heard you say it, I've heard other people say it. She goes to a New York market or an LA market or these big cities that she gets lost in the spotlight a little bit with all the other
Yep.
stars that are in there. And so if you can make a name for yourself staying in the Midwest, Indianapolis, I mean, I, you know,
It's
that that's
honestly
that's
probably
that's a no-brainer in my
yeah.
opinion. And I want her to stay. Don't get me wrong. And if she stays, I'm going to a game next year. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'll spend the money. I don't care. I'm gonna see her. But I just think the situation lines up kind of perfectly for her to move on. So well, time will tell, but that decision will come sooner rather than later. So
If you're a basketball fan living in Indianapolis or the state of Indiana, you are so happy if that happens because you have Caitlin Clark coming to town. You have Tyrese Halliburton for the Pacers. you got some young talented players in both
And Indiana
leagues.
women's game is obviously still really good too.
Yeah,
So, like you said, it's such a basketball state. Like it's
it
crazy.
really is. Meanwhile, the Iowa men's team, we are sitting at a situation right now where we are still in the hope of maybe making the tournament, although I do think that it's still a long stretch. I don't want to get too carried away because this team, it seems like with Iowa athletics, when you get too far into feeling good about something, they tear your heart out and you are like, yeah, this is why we are an Iowa Hawkeye fan. So I don't want to get too carried away with, the last two wins, although really good wins. I said going into the Wisconsin game that we still had a chance, or I guess this was maybe after the Wisconsin game because I recorded after that game. I said we control our own destiny because of the schedule, good or bad, good and bad news. The good news is our schedule down the way has quad one opportunity after opportunity and really tough games. The bad news is they're really tough games, and be able to go on the road, Michigan State, Illinois, Illinois again at Northwestern. It's going to be really tough to do. And I didn't think we would obviously pull it off last night. Here we are. We beat Michigan State, but this team still has a shot. I just think that we have to, as Iowa fans, know what we're talking, like who we are. And this team, we've seen it from time to time this year where, we get a lead, we lose it. There's games that we shouldn't have lost. So although it would be great to make it, and I'm hoping we do, I still think it's a long shot. Like I still think we have 4 more regular season games. We probably have to go 3-1. So that means you have to win your 2 home games and win one of the 2 remaining away games. And then I think even at that, you got to go to the Big Ten tournament and probably win at least 1 game there, if not 2 games there. And I think at that point, I think you're in. I think anything less is like you're a bubble team and you are nervous as hell watching the selection show, hoping that you're the last 4 in. Anything less than that is kind of where I think is where we are at.
Yeah, these last 2 wins, I mean, incredible wins. Quad one wins, which we hadn't had up until this point with Wisconsin and obviously the game last night at Michigan State. While I love it, like you've hinted at, it's like, man, it just frustrates you because we've had some of these games in the past where we had leads. Speaking of leads that were blown, we don't do it. We don't close the deal. And you look back and you're like, man, if we could have just split some of those games or won, more than not, then we wouldn't really be in the situation that we're in where, yeah, brutal end of the schedule, but now you gotta win them, right? Like you said,
Yep.
you probably got to go 3-1. You have 2 games against Illinois, which they look really, really good right now. And Northwestern's no cupcake. And yeah, obviously we got like Penn State, which did we beat Penn State the first time or no?
No, we didn't. That was one of the games where we get up by 7
Right.
points on the road. Like this is a game that we should win. We
Right.
should have won, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you this isn't a guarantee. And I think that's where you kind of set the perspective like pretty good. It's like, while it's great to be optimistic, like there's a reason I think this team kind of has gone through these ups and downs because we're not a really, really great team. But we're finding ways to win when it matters most. And yeah, obviously if we somehow go 3-1 and like you said, maybe get a double bye and win a game in the tournament or something and get in the big dance, you never know. So, but yeah, I think you kind of set the expectations at a kind of a more realistic than what we're seeing right now, where it's like, man, we're going to make it. It's like, we know how this team kind of has went throughout the year, and I don't want to get my hopes up yet. So
I think if you go 3-1, yeah, you're going to be set up for potentially, like you said, a double bye in the Big Ten tournament, if not like a 5 or 6 seed. And what I like about that is you're not going to be facing Purdue. I just don't want to be an 8 or 9 seed because you're going to be playing Purdue. And that's one team that Iowa just does not stand a chance. We just do not know how to beat Purdue with, even though we did like 2 years ago in the Big Ten championship game. But that was a little bit different. We were a little bit better that year, right? This
Right.
this team is not quite as good.
We don't have a Keegan Murray, so
Yeah. So I when I did that basketball preview at the beginning of the year, I had us right now at 16 and 11 at this point in time. Now I've obviously some of the games were wrong. One win, I had one as a win, it was a loss, or vice versa. But
right.
I had this team at 16, 11, and 8-8 in conference play, and that is exactly where we are at right now. And so I was kind of looking just to see, like last year, Penn State, who made the tournament, they were similar to Iowa. They were 14-11, and they kind of went on like a burner at the end of the year, winning like 5 of their last 6 games. And then they went to the tournament, Big Ten tournament with some momentum because they just won, like I said, like 5 out of the last 6 regular season games. And they ended up going all the way to Sunday, and they played Purdue in the championship game.
Yeah,
So,
I do
and they
remember
made the
that.
tournament then. I mean, at that
Yeah,
point, when they were 14-11, there was no way they were making the tournament, but they went on like a burner towards the end of the year. And that's exactly what maybe Iowa can do, but it's going to
right.
be so tough. Like going on the road playing at Illinois. Now, if we beat Illinois on Saturday, this entire conversation is changing because that is now in a week span, you
Yeah.
just won 3 quad 1 wins.
Yep.
Wisconsin, Michigan State, Illinois, 2 of which were on the road. That is
Yep.
hella impressive. So right now, Iowa's net rankings at 62. We have 2 quad 1 wins right now, although could be 3 after tomorrow night if Minnesota beats Ohio State. And then, yeah, we have 3 more opportunities. And we can go from the first 25 games having 0 quad 1 wins to all of a sudden, if we start piling up some, we can finish the year off with 4 or 5 and then
Right.
potentially in the Big Ten tournament. So still a shot. A week ago right now, after losing to Maryland, I would said there is a 0% chance we make the tournament. And now it's a little bit more, but
Yeah.
cautious, optimistic is what I'm kind of at right now.
Yeah.
I want to be optimism, with, at an all-time high with, I'm always like that, but I have to control myself. So I have to know that, hey, let's settle down a little bit. And like you
Yeah.
said, we got to realize who we are, right? There's a
Yeah.
reason why we are 16-11. There is a reason why, we lost some of these games. I'm just, I just want those 4 games back that we were up by in the second
Yeah.
half. Indiana, both times against Maryland and Penn State. Because even if 2 out of those 4 games you win, we are now 18-9 and sitting
Yeah.
comfortably, right? Or losing to Michigan at home back in December. Michigan's a horrible team. Like that should not have happened. We should not have lost to them. And that was a quad 3 game. And so right now we're 6-0 in quad 4, which is huge. Last year we actually had a quad 4 loss, which dampened us a little bit. But this year we're 3-1 in quad 3, and if we would just beat Michigan, we'd be 4-0 right now in quad 3, and it would look a lot better. But that game kind of stings as well. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. All I'm saying is March is so much more fun when you have a team that is competing or in the NCAA tournament.
For sure.
So especially when you are.
Well, I was just gonna say, did you see like I was just thinking back and like I actually was thinking this like after the game and like I think I just saw it today where I was like, man, I just love the way this team's playing right now. Like we just play like we're playing so much harder and like actually like attacking and like trying to draw contact and stuff like that. And like then I saw today it was like, didn't they hold like a players only meeting and basically just say like call each other out and it's like get tougher. Like
apparently Connor McCaffrey was like part of it.
Yeah,
is what I saw.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, they're peaking at the right time, and hey, if it takes a Connor McCaffrey speech to get everyone fired up, then hey, I'm all for it.
Well, it is. I mean, seriously, like these last 2 games, and even like this Illinois. I mean, the rest of the regular season, you have to treat it as if it's like a tournament game because
it's one game at a time, right? It's a tournament game. Each game is like you said, another game to keep advancing. And
because if you lose, it's like you're digging yourself into a further and further hole that it's going to be hard to get out of if you like lose a game and whatnot. So,
but if they get in, it's one of the more impressive feats for Fran that I've seen in a while.
100%, because this is more or less a rebuilding year in a way. Now, yes, there are some veteran guys on the team, but you talk the younger guys and things like that. It would be incredible feat, especially after the last couple of weeks of where, we were kind of in a hole and,
Yeah.
you think the Iowa State game when we lost by like, what was it, like 30, 40 points, Purdue game losing by a shit ton, Michigan
Yeah.
at home, like, yeah, it'd be pretty incredible.
Some dark times early on, that's for sure.
Yep. All right, let's now switch to football for a little bit because that is what we are after all, more of a football podcast. So, what was it? Maybe 2 weeks ago, Vegas set out the line. Iowa 7.5. Like I said, I haven't checked. It might have gone up because I'm sure people hammered the over because 7.5 almost seems a little too low. So what we're going to do here, just real quick to kind of end the show, kind of fun little thing. We're going to kind of go through the schedule, and this is all for fun because we are not even into spring ball yet. So
Yeah.
there's so many things that are going to happen. You got spring ball, which, there's going to be injuries. There's going to be different things like that. Then you have the transfer portal window open up again. And if you think for like Iowa, that can really shape out like the viewpoint of a season because like you think like last year going out and getting Caleb Brown, we didn't really expect that. And all of a sudden we got, a receiver that, hey, we're actually feeling a little bit more like now I'm feeling comfortable about that position group. 2 years ago, I don't know if you remember, but like Charlie Jones leaving, remember that was like after spring ball. And it was like, wow, like this sucks. Like we would not like, we go from like feeling decent to not feeling as good. So this is all for fun. Anything can change.
Right.
So I'm not going to spend much time on the two like non-conference shitty games, Illinois State, Troy, because those should both be wins. Iowa State at home. For me, like I thought like what Iowa State did last year, talking about like, just before with Iowa football or basketball, like being impressive this year if they make the tournament with kind of the roster. Iowa State, what they did last year, given all the kind of the drama with the gambling situation. And I know we had it too, but they had it way worse than us and kind of the younger team to be able to finish the year off. What were they? 7-5. Or were they 6-6? They were somewhere on there, but they were bowl eligible. 7-5. Make it to a bowl game. I know they lost, but like pretty incredible feat that Matt Campbell did last year. I will say this though, just like Iowa. So I'm not making fun of them. This is exactly what Iowa does too, is when we are flying under the radar, that's when we are at our best. When we start having expectation and you're expected to be good because you have the roster, you have everybody back, that is when it feels like we kind of don't do as good. And so for Iowa State last year, everybody was against them. Like they are going to be horrible. I saw so many places thinking that they were going to go 2-10 or 3-9. This team is shitty. Right. And I think it almost kind of fueled them. And, they had no expectations. There was no pressure. Now this year you're bringing back 19 or 20 guys. Like I think they're the second team in the country with the most returning production. So there's going to be expectation now that, hey, everybody's back. You guys are supposed to be decent, right? And so we'll have to wait and see. Now losing their offensive coordinator is big time, Nate Scheelhaus. I don't know what they're going to do there. I don't know if they're going to go out of the program or they're going to stay in house. But regardless, I think that's a huge loss. But I would say as of right now, though, if all things considered, if our offense is just halfway decent, paired up with our defense, paired up with Kinnick Stadium and our crowd, I know they beat us 2 years ago, but our offense was, if we just had a pulse on offense, we would have won that game. All that considered, I do think that this should be a win for Iowa.
Yeah, right now, as I look at it, I would agree with you. I think it's a win. The defense is still for Iowa, obviously going to be elite, and knock on wood, on paper, offense should be better than years past, hopefully. So like you said, if we just have some sort of pulse on offense to move the ball and get in some scoring position a few times, you rely on your defense still. I think right now, I agree. I think we have an edge, and right now it's a win.
Yep. So we should be 3-0 non-conference. Illinois State, Iowa State, Troy. Then we play at Minnesota. And I keep saying this, man, like what took place last year, I think that still pisses Kirk off. I still don't think Kirk really likes PJ Fleck. I just think that this is a game where and with everybody that's kind of coming back that was part of that game. And I wish Cooper was coming back because this game would especially mean something. But I just think with all those things considered, Minnesota is bringing in a new quarterback who led the FCS last year. but that was also at New Hampshire. So you don't really know how good
Yeah.
someone's going to be like in the Big Ten when you're facing defenses like Iowa and other things like that compared to playing at New Hampshire, right? So going into
Yeah.
that game, they would have played North Carolina, Rhode Island, Nevada, so they could very well be 3-0. But I'm going to go with a win on the road. So
I
4
agree.
0.
I think it's going to be obviously at Minnesota. It'll be tough. Earlier game than what, we usually play
Yeah.
Minnesota, I feel like,
Yep.
which is weird to say and weird to think about. But I agree with you. I think last year's freaking illegal fair catch debacle just sticks in the mind of Kirk Ferentz and those players, and I think they'll be up for that game. They've got that one circled. So I agree with you. I think as of now, as it sits, a win.
And then I love where the bye week is at. We have 2 byes this year, and I
Yeah.
love how it's like, okay, you get the first 4 games done, you get a bye
Yep.
week to kind of start October. And then we play at
Right.
Ohio
Right.
State. And Ohio State, this is going to be one of those games where, it's just unless we just somehow go in there and play the best football that we can play, this is just an automatic loss for me. They brought in Chip Kelly.
Yeah.
Quarterback will probably be Will Howard, I'm guessing. They brought in that stud running back from Ole Miss. Igbuka's back. Caleb Downs from Alabama's going there. Like, this is going to be a really good team. And so, like I said, we would have to play our best. And frankly, like, a loss doesn't really mean anything. So I
No.
really, like, at the end of the day, like, for me, and we'll probably talk about this going into that game. It's like, if we can just play decent, I'll be happy. So I'm going to put that as a loss.
Yeah, and just looking at the talent disparity, I mean, it's head and shoulders. They're probably the best team in the country on
Yeah.
paper right now as it sits. So it's no shame in losing to them, and yeah, it probably won't be close. But hopefully with a guy like Tim Lester with a bye week, we actually game plan for
Exactly.
them and actually, be competitive, unlike years past where we walk into this thing and it's well, except for obviously when we played Ohio State at home and we actually freaking dominated it and it was the greatest game of my life. But other than that, it's few and far between when we play some of these ranked opponents and tough opponents, especially on the road. So, but yeah, it's probably a loss. It's obviously a loss right now. So
They played Michigan State before us, so at least they don't have a bye week. I know, like, I think was it
yeah,
this last year, two
that's
years
true.
ago, that when we played them, they had a bye week before us. Then we get Washington at home, and I know this game, Washington won't be as good as they were last year, but this is still going to be like I just can't wait for that day in Iowa City, the buzz in the air, because it's going to feel so much different because we're playing a team that we have never played inside Kinnick before. They
Yeah,
have a new head coach, Jed Fish from Arizona. I think that's a great hire, but losing Caleb DeVore is obviously a pretty big loss, and losing their offensive coordinator is a pretty big loss as well. They replace a lot of players. Like, I'm almost
yeah,
positive, I think I saw their entire offense will be new next year, which is
it's
incredible.
crazy.
Will Rogers, quarterback transfer from Mississippi State, will probably be the starter. And they played Michigan the week before us. So I like to include those things because, whoever they played the week before, like, that's going to be a big game for them versus like if they had a bye week or, they
Yeah,
play a non-conference game. So that's kind of big. I think this is a win for Iowa. I really do. I think if we're 4-1 going in this game, I think the electricity in Kinnick is going to be unmatched, could possibly be a night game. And
yeah.
I don't honestly do not see this being a loss. Like, I think I'm like really confident that we will win this game.
Yeah, and it's crazy because you're talking about the runner up to the national championship.
Yeah,
But like you said,
exactly.
it's a completely different team. And with the way that the transfer portal works now, I mean, their team got decimated. Like, thank God I'm not that team, a fan of
Yeah.
that team. Because like you don't know what to expect. You don't know if you're still even going to be competitive. Like it's just a whole new team, like you said. And I agree. I think as it sits now, being a home game, huge game. Obviously, Washington coming in, like that's such a great game. And I agree. I'm confident that we can get it done.
Yep. Then the following game is at Michigan State, new head coach there again. I mean, talk about new head
Yeah.
coaches that Iowa is going to face. Oregon State head coach Jonathan Smith is now there. I'm guessing their
Good
quarterback will.
coach.
Yeah, no, he's a
I like
really.
him a lot.
I think that's a
Yeah.
great hire for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think their quarterback's going to be Aiden Childs, who's a transfer from Oregon State. He was a highly
Yeah.
ranked
Yeah.
transfer for them, but he was only a backup last year, so this would be like his first kind of legit start.
Yeah.
They have a bye week before Iowa, which scares me a little bit. So we'll be coming off Ohio State, Washington,
Yep.
and then they get a bye week. And for them, that's huge because you're talking a new head coach. Who knows? Because for them, before their bye week, they play Ohio State and then at Oregon, which are probably 2 losses. So they're going to go into that bye week, regroup. I don't feel very good about this game. I just feel like this is a game on the road. We usually lose one of these games that we should win. As of right now, I'm going to just put this as an L. And once again, this is all for fun. Things can change, but I think this game might be a loss for Iowa. Just because it should be a win, and we just find a way to lose it. It's just how I could see it happening.
Yeah, and you talk about we're a much better team, but look what happened last year. I mean, they came in to Kinnick and they almost won, but wasn't that the game where Cooper had like a punt return for touchdown and won
Yep.
the game?
Yeah.
That's what it took. So like to me, it's like on the road and like you said, playing 2 huge opponents beforehand or before that game, the bye week, which I was going to bring up for them, huge to game plan and prepare and get healthy. And it's just kind of that, trap game where it's like, man, it's just you go to on the road, a team you're probably supposed to win, but it's the Big Ten. So yeah, I hate to agree with you again, but I agree. Right now, I think it's a tough one.
Yep. Next game after that one is Northwestern. Man, I loved what they did with David Braun. I think he's a hell of a coach. You go from like thinking that this team is going to be horrible for like a decade after all those allegations and Pat Fitzgerald gone to future looks pretty damn bright with him. And then they got that Zach Lejan, that offensive coordinator at South Dakota State, who best FCS team in the last few years.
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be a good team every year. Like it's going to be like one of those games where it's going to be like a tough game to win. Now we probably won't play them every year now with the new Big Ten, but we do play them next year. Quarterback is going to be Brendan Sullivan. More than likely, he played a few games last year while Bryant was hurt, including the Iowa game. He played the entire game against Iowa because that's when Bryant was hurt. They play Wisconsin the week before, which I think is, that's always going to be a tough game for them. So for me, with this game being at home, I think this should be a win for Iowa. It's probably going to be a hard fought game. It's going to be probably like a low scoring game, like always. But we should find a way to win.
Yeah, a much tougher game than originally anticipated. And like you said, their new head coach, along with a great offensive coordinator hire for them. I think the future's bright and they'll continue to get better. But I think right now it's still going to be a win for Iowa.
And then, so now so we're at Wisconsin now. This is a game before we have our second bye, but Luke Fickell there, second year. You kind of thought you kind of imagined last year, and I think we kind of called it that it's going to be kind of an up and down year for them in his first year. I think everybody was like so high on Wisconsin last year, like they're going to win 10 games, or I even saw one place had them winning like 11 games last year. And I was like, okay, let's pump the brakes a little bit. I think Luke Fickell's a great coach, but it's going to take more than just, it's going to take longer than a year to really rebuild any program. I don't care how many transfers you get. Big thing for them is they lose Braylon Allen and Tanner Mordecai. They're both gone. And they bring in Tyler Van Dyke, who was at Miami. And I don't really see that he is that good. I know he had a really good 2021 campaign, but this last year, his stats weren't great. 19 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He got benched at one point, I saw. So very shaky season. So I'm not like, now watch me, like watch him actually go off this year. But I don't think like he's better than Tanner Mordecai. Like I think Tanner Mordecai was better than him. So he doesn't really scare me that much.
Hey, although same guy. Well, I was to say he's the same guy that handed that ball off and didn't just kneel it to choke that one game away. You remember that?
Yeah, the Miami game.
Even though like the coach calls the play, it's like, why wouldn't you just kneel it, bro? But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, like with Wisconsin, though, I'm sure just a team in general, they're gonna be better next year. But I think losing like Braylon Allen too is a pretty big. And they play Penn State before they play Iowa. I'm loving how some of these teams that we face play some tough games the week before us. I think that bodes well for Iowa. I have this game as a win as of right now, but like I said, things can change.
I was looking at this schedule and we beat them last year. They're going to want revenge. I know it's a home game. I have it as a loss right now. I think they're going to be a better team. They're going to have some new running back that's just freaking goated.
Well, won't they have that one running back that got
Malusi?
Yeah, it's going to be him who got hurt.
It'll probably be him. and he was off to a historic start to the season before he broke his leg or whatever happened.
That was
So
a game that we were down in Phoenix. We were watching that
yeah,
when that
yep,
happened.
yep. You're right, and so it's just hard. Like I don't know. I agree with you. I think time will tell. Just with the way the season shakes out to that point, I might change my mind, but I have it as a loss right now.
And then we get a bye week again. And I like where this bye week is at. Or no, wait. No,
No,
never
it's
mind. No,
after.
it's after this.
Yeah,
Yep. Actually, yes. So we play UCLA. This is a hard game to project because Chip Kelly's gone now. They're at the time when I was preparing this stuff, they had no head coach announced yet, but they do now. I think it was one of their position coaches or something is now their head coach. But they're hard to
yeah,
project because they're dead last in recruiting for 2024. Chip Kelly practically didn't do any recruiting or even in the transfer portal because he knew he was going to be gone. Like he knew he was done.
yeah,
And which sucks for them. But for this though, is like Iowa never plays well West Coast. And that's going to have to change here because every year you're going to play one or two games out on the West Coast. But just historically, we have been god awful when we play out on the West Coast for some reason. I don't know why, but we just have. And, it's going to be a team that we never faced, or, if we have, it's been a
yeah.
long time. And I just think it's going to be challenging, but just because of how I just do not think they're going to be good. They played Nebraska the week before. They actually play at Rutgers and then at Nebraska the 2 weeks before us. So I have this game as a win, but I think it's going to be tough, but I have it as a win as of right now.
I'm the same with you. I have it as a win. I think we're a better team, and like you mentioned, how just their roster is just not a very good roster, and that's in large part due to Chip Kelly not just basically hating recruiting and hating the way college football is such a grind. I feel like so he just didn't really care. We'll still be a very tough game, like you said. When you have to go out west and go that far for a game, it just that alone makes it 10 times harder. But I have it as a win right
Yeah.
now.
And then finally our bye week, which
Yeah.
this is where I
Which,
like the bye
well,
week at
I was think
because
I was looking at it right away and I forgot that we had a second bye. I'm like, wait, we have to go we have to go to LA and then we have to go to freaking Maryland the week after,
yeah,
but then I forgot there's a bye.
bye
So
week.
yeah.
Thank God, because that would
Yeah.
suck. So Maryland, Mike Loxley, it always seems like with him, he starts the year off always so good. And then as the year
Yeah.
goes on, which for this is hopefully that trend continues because we play them at the second half or the second to last game, unlike most years where it feels like we play them more towards the beginning of the year. Their quarterback's gone. Billy Edwards is probably going to be their quarterback. I don't know. I was just reading some stuff into that, and that's kind of who they think. They play Rutgers a week before us, and then at Oregon 2 weeks before us. This is another just tricky game. It's going to be a tough
Yeah.
game on the road. I just think just similar to UCLA, like as long as we're healthy, we should be the better team. Like we,
Yeah.
defensively, right? If Cade's healthy, if our offensive line's actually decent with Proctor and we have some just solid playmakers, like we should win this game. Like we should. But it's going to be tough. Once again, I'm going to have this as a win for right now, but things can change pretty dramatically. Like the Maryland UCLA game, like to me could be toss ups just because of being on the
Yeah.
road and traveling
Right.
almost cross country. Right. But I have it as a win for right now.
Yeah, and I think to his brother, whatever his name is, Talia or whatever, didn't he like try to get a waiver to come back or
Yeah. And
something?
he
And it
didn't get it.
didn't get it. So thank God he's gone. It seems like he's been there for 20 years. So
Yep.
yeah, I agree. I think their team shouldn't be as good. I feel like this season is just with him moving on and having to be done. And yeah, I know it's it's just another game where you have to travel so far for it. But like you said, you have the bye week to prepare and kind of get right, and hopefully, we prevail. And I think we will as of now looking at it. I think we're the better team.
Especially if we are where we're at, like if our record is good at that point,
Yeah.
like we'll know like at that bye week, it's like, hey, 2 more games and like we are in contention to, make it to the playoff or something that I just think like that will just
Right.
help us compel to these last 2 games. And then Nebraska, thank God this is a home game because I
Yep.
do think that this team is going to be pretty good second year under Matt Rule. Quarterback will be probably Dylan Raiola, who's going to be the freshman. And I wish we played Nebraska like the second game of the season because I'd be feeling a little bit better. But I feel like by then, if he's starting all the entire year, he's going to have his feet wet a little bit. But you do have to play at Kinnick in front of our, against our defense. It's going to be tough for him. Plus, Nebraska's schedule at the end of the year is brutal. They play at USC and then Wisconsin before us. I have this as a win. I think we should beat them this year. If this was on the road, I would probably say no, but true freshman quarterback inside Kinnick, Black Friday, a game that, if we're where we're at, it's going to be a huge game. It might determine if we make the playoffs or not, or make it to the Big Ten championship game. I see this being a win as of right now, so I'm going to go with a dub.
Yeah, it always seems like this game has a lot of implications to it, especially if you're trying to contend for Big Ten championship or something like that. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think last year was the year that they should have easily had us with our pathetic offense, and obviously they couldn't take down the backup kicker. So I think their chance was last year, and like you said, they're gonna have a freshman quarterback. Probably will have a lot of games under his belt, but there's nothing like going into Kinnick. And for that game, I mean, that's a hated rivalry. So I feel good now, but I know going into that game, it's just like the Iowa State game. It's just I hate playing that game,
Yep,
right? It's
exactly.
rivalry game, anything can happen. But you're right. Nebraska is probably still going to be a pretty decent team. I think Matt Rule, great coach, and we'll have them ready. I just they still haven't gotten over the hump of trying to win close games. They still find ways to lose. So I'm hoping that trend continues. But
yeah, no kidding. So with that being said, yeah, like I have Iowa going, 10-2. And I think that's kind of where like the average is going to kind of be at. But I do think that there are games on the schedule that could easily be losses that like, if we don't play good, like we'll lose. And so like,
yeah,
I think if I had to bet this, I would go over for sure, because even if, you find another loss or two, that's still 8-4 and that's still over the 7.5. And I think,
right.
I just think 8-4 is just given the schedule. Cause we all thought, with this new Big Ten, like, oh, the schedule is going to be so tough, but the schedule is very manageable. Now, after this year, it gets a little bit tougher like in 2025, but this year it's besides Ohio State, every game is manageable. Every game is.
Yeah.
You get all your tough games besides Ohio State at home. And you're facing a lot of teams with essentially rookie head coaches, Washington, Michigan State, UCLA. So,
well, when you think about it too, Colin, like think about it, like you don't have to face Michigan, Penn State, or Oregon, USC. Those are all going to be contenders at the top. Yeah, you're going to have to face probably the hardest one of them all in Ohio State, but if you can go 1 out of 5, I mean, you'll take that any day.
Don't have to face like a team like Illinois who always plays us tough.
Yeah.
Teams like that, like you don't really think about. We get Northwestern at home, a team that like if you want to play like anybody, you're going to want to play like Northwestern, right? Or if you're going to have to play anybody from the West Coast, you're going to want to play UCLA. That's the worst team out of those 4.
Yeah.
And Washington, who's probably like Washington, UCLA are the bottom 2 compared to Oregon, USC. Like we got lucky there. Now, if we would have played Washington this year, or this last year, it'd have been a little bit different story because they were really good. But losing everybody that they did, and with a new head coach, like that should be a little bit more manageable. But also,
and even like the East Coast team, I think Rutgers is probably better than Maryland right now as it sits. I would probably prefer to play Maryland.
Yeah.
So
I probably would too.
Yeah.
So it's definitely favorable. It's a very manageable schedule. I think if Iowa, with the new expanded playoff, if we're sitting at 10-2, I think we have a shot to make it. I don't know if we'll make the Big Ten tournament because now with 18 teams, I'm sure there's going to be multiple teams at 10-2, right? Or 11-1, or hell, even 12-0. And I just think it's going to be so tough. But if you're 10-2, you could still possibly make it as kind of an at-large bid. But the
Yeah.
problem is, and I saw this on Twitter, I think maybe even John Miller said it. It's like, this is why the offense needs to improve, because there's still going to be a certainty of the human
Yeah.
element of style of play that's going to go
Yep.
in effect. And if you're 10-2, but your offense still sucks and you're an embarrassment, you're not going to get in, because the committee's just not going to bring you in, because they're going to look at that and be like, that's a turn off.
Well, they're
I'm
going to
like,
look at the way we play in big games these last couple of years, right? It's
yep,
very non-competitive. Non-competitive is putting it mildly, right?
exactly. That's
So,
why we got to get competitive in big games, and you got to have an offense.
yeah.
That way, if you do finish 10-2, there's still a shot that you make it, because the committee will,
At
hopefully, if
that
you're
point,
better, they
that
respect you.
in that point, yeah, unfortunately, I mean, it sucks to say, but it kind of is a beauty contest. Like you need to impress
Yep.
the judges essentially, right? So, yeah, you're exactly right. You have to have an offense. Not only and like that's the thing. Not only to be competitive in the tough games, but we saw how hard some of these quote unquote easier games were when we didn't have an offense either.
Yep.
Northwestern, Nebraska, I mean, half our freaking schedule, well, most of our schedule. So
Yeah,
that
every
be
game
having
was
a
a
better
tough game.
offense and every game was a tough game, and I get it. Like, I just think like you said, having a better offense and praying Cade stays healthy for a season, that'll be the keys, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah, because the college football playoff, they actually came out with that new updated format yesterday. Is the 5 highest ranked conference champions, and then
yeah.
it's essentially, then it's just 7 at large after that. So,
Well, and I just saw on Twitter, I think they just discussed. I don't know if this is true. I think it is, but they were discussing a possible like 14 team playoff that could come as soon as 2026.
dang,
So I just saw it on Twitter. Don't quote me, but
I
you could check it after
yeah,
the pod, and yeah, if that happened, I mean that's crazy.
I
So
do think at some point it's going to keep expanding, and we're going to get to the point where like we're at like 16 or 20 or 24, or
right,
I kind of like what the FCS does. I think FCS does 24 teams. I could really see the NCAA doing that, or FBS doing that at some point. So, but yeah, so
yep,
that will do it for that. I just think if I was going to make the bet, I would do the over. I think seven and a
hit
half
the over,
is
hit
comfortable,
that over.
just
Yep,
because I think at worst we're an 8-4 team this year.
yeah,
I really do, unless we just completely shit the bed and our offense is just still god awful. But fuck, we went 10-2 with a horrible offense this last year, and our defense should be just as good this next
yeah,
year, given everybody that's coming back. Now, obviously losing Cooper, losing Joe Evans, like that sucks. But you
yeah,
bring back pretty much everybody on the defense. Like our defense should be just as good, if not possibly better. And
yeah,
then your offense, you just pray and hope that Lester can make it at least average, or
yep,
at least respectable. And at that point, then yeah, you should win more than 7.5 games, or you could say you should win just as many games, if not more, than what you did last year. So that is
yeah,
kind of where we're at. So you
yep,
you could make the argument that this last year's schedule was just as tough as this next year's schedule. Because last year we had to play at Penn State, so it's just like similar to like playing at Ohio State, right?
yeah,
And so, and
yeah.
then you had to play at Iowa State, you had to play at
That
Wisconsin, at Nebraska. You get all those games at home. So essentially,
correct.
this schedule could be easier than last year's schedule.
Yep.
So, but once again, it's February 21st. Anything can change. An injury
Yeah,
to
I was gonna say
someone
one
on the
injury could.
team, or
Yeah,
even against a team that we're facing a big time injury, or something happens with this team, or like last year, Northwestern in the middle of June, randomly that whole thing comes out with Pat Fitzgerald. These things that you don't expect sometimes
yep,
happen between now
yep,
and the first game of the season, and it can just completely alter either your team, or it could alter a team that you're facing, and it can go from being like, oh, that's maybe a win, to, oh yeah, that should easily be a win, or that's probably a loss, to, oh yeah, that's definitely a loss. So
right.
just is kind of where we're at right now. But all right, well, that will do it for this episode. We got a lot done. We got a lot of things that we wanted to discuss done. And yeah, we'll just have to see kind of what all happens with spring ball coming up here shortly. We got women's basketball tomorrow night against Indiana. We got the Big Ten tournament for both women's and men's coming up here, March Madness. Hopefully we make it for the men's, but we definitely will with the women's. Got a lot to look forward to, a lot to be excited about as Hawkeye fans. And Yeah, we just hope to see, hopefully we can go far in the women's tournament for sure. And I just hope we make it for men. It's just something to look forward to. So
Yep, for sure. Lots to look forward to. Excited for what's ahead, and yeah, I'm sure we'll be doing another episode soon, and hopefully talking about more of the GOAT and
yep.
more basketball in general. So
We'll definitely probably maybe do one next week. We might take a week off and then we'll be back for sure in the next couple of weeks. Especially once we get into like March and we are really into that time period. And I would say even by next week, we'll have more of an idea of like,
well,
will we make the
yeah,
men's bat? Like right now, it's
right.
still like very iffy. But I would say by a week by now, because a week by now we would have played Illinois, we'd have played Penn State. We will definitely know more like next week at this time. Like, okay, yeah, this team is
Yeah.
no way they make the tournament. Or yeah, we're still in consideration.
Yeah, and I
So
know we hinted at it, and I know we kind of did a one-off episode with different topics, including like the Super Bowl and stuff. I would like to do something with kind of the NFL draft as well when that gets
yeah, when
nearer
that
and
time period
closer
comes
too.
around,
So
yep, sometime in
yeah,
April for
yep.
sure.
Which will be
Especially
right around the
because
corner.
Cooper
So
DeJean, especially if he has a
well,
good
yeah,
combine, could be a very high draft pick for us. So
yep.
that's always exciting. But well, that will do it for this episode. Until then, have a good rest of your week and go Hawks.